now. It's facing out that way.
Okay.
Welcome, and I'd like to introduce you to Linda Makins of Makinsachange Creative Environments. We're going to be talking today about Linda's career and how it has taken a very organic path and what's brought her to her 60s and enjoying her working life.
Yes, well, thank you for having me, Patricia.
This is going to be fun because it's going to be very organic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just more or less how you speak about your life. So
Absolutely.
we want to continue with that theme. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I am an interior designer, professional interior designer. I've been practicing for over 35 years. Mm-hmm. I work on commercial spaces, condominium buildings, and I also do residential projects.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that you are being inducted as a fellow fairly soon. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yes. Over the course of my career, I've been very involved with our profession and and our professional association. I'm the past president of Interior Designers of Canada. So we represent all interior designers, professional interior designers across Canada. And September, I will be inducted into as a fellow of Interior Designers of Canada in recognition of my contribution to our profession.
Congratulations! That's quite an honor.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Tell us, how did you start out in your career?
Well, that's a very interesting question because I had a very I made a very conscious decision when I chose interior design as a profession. I wanted something that was going to be organic and it was going to allow me to live my life as a person who could be a stay-at-home mother, work on my own, be an entrepreneur, and it seemed that the path of an interior designer lends itself to that type of lifestyle.
I understand that the seed was planted very young. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yes, it was planted very young. I, as a little girl, always saw space differently. I was always rearranging spaces in my mind, imagining how much it could be improved. And do you remember the Sears catalog?
Yes.
I used to go through the Sears catalog and choose these dinette sets and look at the little swatches of fabric, photographs of the swatches, and I had this whole vision, and I always had this dream that someday I would be an interior designer and I would create this beautiful home for my mother and father. Yeah, so it was really in me from a very young age.
Well, it goes back to when you were about 5 years old and you were at an art class, is that correct?
Actually, in public school, I grew up in Parkdale, and we went to the park as part of our art class. And so we had our easel, we had our boards, and we had charcoal. And my little classmates were drawing the trees and flowers, and I was sitting there on a park bench and I was drawing the recreation center in full perspective. And so this elderly gentleman sat beside me, and he looked at my drawing, and he asked me, what was I drawing? And I said, I'm drawing the recreation center. And he said, you should be an architect when you grow up.
Oh.
And he said, because that's who designed that building. And I do recall that being a pivotal moment in my life when first of all, I had no idea what an architect was, but secondly, the possibility of having a career, someone spoke to me that way. So I ran home and I told my mom, I was so excited, I said, Mommy, I'm going to be an architect when I grow up. And now let's just remember, it's the 60s, and my mom meant well, but she said, oh, honey, that's what boys do. You can be an interior designer. So in all fairness, that, like I said, that was the 60s, but the seed was planted that I loved space, I loved buildings, I was a creative person, and someone had acknowledged it. So, and that's something I recall very clearly.
It's amazing just how one person's comment, and sometimes it's from a stranger, right? That they can spark something like that.
I've thought of it. I've thought of it often, and I thought, that was, 55 years ago that happened. And here I am in my 60s and thinking, wow, that moment, that was such a pivotal moment in my life. And it actually, I think it changed the course of my life.
Yeah. I ask the question sometimes about someone's career. What would you say to your younger self? But I think in this situation, is what would you say to that man on the bench?
Oh, I've thought of that. I wish that there was a chance to thank him and acknowledge. Oh, I'm getting kind of,
right from
verklempt.
the heart.
Yeah,
right from the heart.
That this sweet man, I remember his kind face and just smiling at me so gently and not making judgments.
Yeah.
Not saying, oh, she's a little girl.
Yeah.
So he spoke to me as a person.
Yeah.
And I would love to thank him for that, because that was pretty big, pretty special, especially in the 60s.
Of course, especially for a man to say that to
Absolutely.
a little girl. Yeah. Tell us about how your career developed, so that you got to this point in your 60s where you decided you want to make some changes, but it's still part of what you've built.
Absolutely. Well, the beauty of my career, and like I said, the wisdom of choosing a career that had this level of organicness, if that's a word, being so organic, it allowed me to have a career that ran parallel to my life. So, you start, you graduate from university, you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you get your first design job, and you can't believe somebody's paying you to do this thing that you've always loved, and so wonderful, so exciting. And then it was really wonderful. I have to say, what a fabulous career I've had. I've worked on some major projects, and to see it evolve, and then to reach a point in my life where I want to have children, and to know that it's okay in that career to stop for a little while and spend time raising my children and do some parallel things that are a little bit of a smaller scale. But again, once the children grew and I was ready to move into it, I could kind of jump back in and do a little bit of catch up, but not much. Technology had stepped in while I was away. But it moved, and then I took on a business partner, and that grew and that evolved. And then when it was time to kind of go on my own and work a little differently, we dissolved the partnership as best friends do. It had nothing to do with our relationship. It was just time in our careers. And then I moved into this, but what I found last year when I hit 60, something changed. Something big changed, and I looked back on my whole career and all that I learned, and I realized that I had all this great wisdom, and just doing more of the same just was no longer enough. So recognize that I don't really want to quit working. I needed to create a path to something that was once again more organic to what this, I call it Act 3, is going to be all about.
Act 3.
Yes.
And tell me how Act 3 came about, and what came out of that decision for your Act 3.
Okay, well, you know what, this is perfectly timed, because it was last September that I took the summer of Linda off, and because I was really struggling. I was actually reaching a point of unhappiness, and I knew I still love design. And I realized that, I've got to do some changes. So I engaged a consultant, Julie Zuzek, who is the corporate yogi, which totally lines up with who I am. I thought, I really love what she's all about. And she helped me to articulate what it is that I'm trying to achieve, or I want to achieve, in this Act 3. So Julie, in her wisdom, asked me to create a what do they call it?
A vision board.
A vision board. Well, of course, I don't do things like everybody else, and I just didn't want to do a vision board.
That's the creative side of you, right?
Yeah.
Do something.
A vision board? Like I do vision boards all the time for people. I put samples down. Like, cutting and pasting is not what I wanted to do. I've done that. So what I did was I creatively created a video that encapsulated what this thing was, and I had to give it a title. I had to give it a name, so I called it Wigwam. Mm-hmm. Now, you're probably wondering,
why Wigwam?
Why Wigwam?
Why Wigwam?
I am Indigenous. I have an Indigenous heritage, and that's, again, something that's run parallel to everything that I've done as well. I have a very spiritual side to me, so it's the spiritual and the creative coming together. And I realized that Wigwam was a perfect name for what I wanted, because it was a gathering place. Mm-hmm. I want to create a gathering place.
Okay.
A place where people can come and they can, I can share with them all of that wisdom that I've gleaned over the years of being a designer and also being a person in the world, a mother, a friend, a family member. Like there's all this wisdom that's interwoven into everything that I do. Mm-hmm. So it's like, even when I work with clients, I think that's what wisdom is all about. Now at this stage, I will work with my clients and I'll say, no, we're going to do it this way, and I need you to trust me on this. Yeah. That's the wisdom that comes in the Act 3 of your career.
Very good. I think the Wigwam is very suitable as well, because a gathering place, but also a creative environment, correct? So
Absolutely.
You're pulling that from your career into your Act 3, and now you are calling it something a little different than creative environments. What is it that you're calling it now?
Well, what I'm doing is, again, parallel to Makinsachange Creative Environments, which is the vehicle of my business. Wigwam has morphed into the well-designed life.
Well-designed life. Okay.
And well-designed life can be anything when you think of it. It can be your space that you're in, but it can also be the ethereal. It can be the spiritual, how you feel about your space. And that's what I've always wanted to achieve with my work, was that your space is a true reflection of your inner soul. So if you are not feeling right about your space, it's about what's happening inside of you. So my goal is to help you align your space with your inner soul.
That links very clearly with self-care, like extreme self-care. So a lot of women are told about self-care being all about doing their hair, their nails. I talk to young women about this all the time, because extreme self-care is that inner self.
Yes.
And it's your emotional well-being, and not just your physical.
Right.
So I think where you're going with this, a well-designed life, and sharing the wisdom, especially to younger women, younger designers, I think that's very important. So I asked you to look at a picture of you when you were young, and I know you've got a real special photo that we will share, but tell me a little bit about, what would you say to that little girl?
Well, the picture I have in mind is a picture of me where I'm about 5 years old, and I'm about to go to school, and I'm in a pretty little dress, and we're going to have our performance, and I have a little ring of flowers on my head.
Okay.
So that's the picture my mother took of me before we were going to school to do this performance on the stage. Now, number one, the little flowers on my head, my mother created the flowers for my hair, but she also created the flowers for every little girl in the performance. So we were all wearing these little wreaths of flowers, and she made these beautiful crepe flowers. So this is why I'm sharing this, is because my mother was such an influence in that she was a creative person. She had dreams. She had aspirations, and I learned so much from her. So I feel a real connection to my mother, and when I chose a career, she was so proud, because she didn't have these opportunities in her life. She couldn't go to university and say, I want to do this. She was so proud of her daughter who went to school and chose a profession and is now working in it. So that picture is so special because it has so much meaning. And that little girl, actually, that little girl was a very wise little girl, and she had some true insight. And because I remember moments as a little girl, and I was about that age, and there was one moment where I was standing on that sidewalk, and they had created a new patch of little cement pad. And I remember looking at that, and I was only that age. And I looked at it and I thought, that piece of concrete is going to be here for the entirety of my life. And that's when I had a concept of time. And in my mind, I projected myself further as a grown lady, 30 years old, 50 years old, and I actually projected myself to being 75 years old. So as a 5-year-old girl, at that moment, standing on that sidewalk, I knew that life, I would always be who I am, but I will go through all of these stages.
That's quite a lot of foresight for a 5-year-old.
A 5-year-old.
5-year-old.
So my message is, you know what, kid? You did good.
That's great.
You are a smart little
girl.
thing, and you stuck to your guns, and you designed your own well-designed life.
Oh, wow. That's a great time for us to end the interview, but I just have one question to ask you.
Okay.
When you saw that concrete, did you not have the temptation to brand it with your name?
Yes!
That's what we do. So, Linda, thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure and much inspiration to women, younger women, but also those women who are in their 50s, reaching their 60s, and sometimes think that that's the end. They're going to finish their career. They're going to sail off into the sunset, and they're not sure of how they can bring everything that they've learned in their career and move it forward. So this has been a great interview. Thank you very much, and we'll watch for the announcement of your fellowship. That will be. I do hope that you enjoyed the video today, the interview with Linda Makins. I certainly enjoyed our time together. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up, and please subscribe below and hit the little bell so that you're notified whenever I upload another video. Have a happy Labor Day, and kudos to all of you who are still working after 60. Bye.